She was arrested for DUI, but tests showed she wasn't drunk or high. She was tired and anxious. Now she's frustrated and angry. ABC15 investigator Melissa Blasius finds out how this could happen to anybody.
It began as a late-night food run, tacos after 12. Ariel Berry was in the driver's seat as her boyfriend next to her gave directions.
When this cop came out of nowhere and started screaming at me on an intercom to pull over.
She did, in this parking lot near Camelback and 3rd Avenue.
And I was completely shocked. I was really scared.
Phoenix officer Steve Reeves approached the car. He's a trained drug recognition expert, a DRE. Remember that. It'll be important later.
I immediately said, "Officer, what have I done wrong?" And he shined the light and he had a very big attitude. He's like, "What did you do wrong?" And I was like, "Whoa, okay."
Officer Reeves ticketed Ariel for an unsafe lane change, an improper turn, and a red light violation. She did not make a complete stop before turning right on red. But the officer immediately suspected more, noting a faint odor of alcohol.
He took my license on the spot. He took my phone. He took my purse. All I'm wearing is PJs. I don't even have a bra on. I'm doing this the whole time because I'm very uncomfortable.
That night, she told the officer she had severe anxiety of men and cops. The officer notes it 9 times in his brief report. He also wrote about having a hard time getting her to complete the roadside sobriety test.
It was a really awful experience.
Ariel admitted she had a sake earlier, so it didn't surprise her when the breathalyzer read .02, but that's well below the legal driving limit of .08. Per Phoenix police policy, officers can't even arrest you if you blow less than a .05 unless drug intoxication is suspected.
He repeatedly asked me, "Are you on drugs? Have you been taking pill prescriptions?" And I said, "Officer, I have never done drugs in my life. I am just very tired. It is the middle of the night. I am scared of you because you are a man and you have a gun and I don't have anything of protection. You don't have a body camera, so there's no proof what does and doesn't happen tonight."
Here's what did happen. Ariel was arrested for both DUI, drugs, and alcohol.
He repeated, "I'm really good at my job. I have a 98% accuracy rate. I know what I'm doing." And I said, "Officer, that's fine and dandy, sir, but you are wrong."
When Ariel's blood test did come back, it showed 0 drugs and a barely there .01 blood alcohol level.
How often do people get arrested for DUI when they're sober?
It's not super common.
Defense attorney Russ Richelsoff is not affiliated with this case, but he has other clients with bad DUI busts, and he says officers get tunnel vision.
Having an anxiety attack while driving, that's not a crime. Being tired while driving, that's not a crime. And both of those things can exhibit symptoms that to a police officer who's only looking for DUIs will look like a DUI.
But there is an immediate test designed to specifically look for drug intoxication, a 12-step drug recognition exam. But Ariel says that 12-step exam was never conducted. It's unclear why.
And that's strange because remember how I told you that Officer Reeves is a DRE, a drug recognition expert. He's one of just 300 officers in the state who've undergone weeks of training on specifically how to administer that drug exam.
Phoenix police won't comment about the case because Ariel has filed a complaint against their department. It took her nearly 2 months to get the DUI charges dropped and her criminal case closed. Ariel says she's still upset, but does not want the officer to get in trouble. She just wants more training for police, like she gets as an educator.
Shouldn't you approach people kindly? Because irrelevant of why you're pulling them over, you're the one with all the power.
I'm investigator Melissa Blasius, ABC15 Arizona.
DUI drug arrests, they're climbing in Arizona, about 4,000 just last year.
And across the state, 300 officers have been trained and certified to spot when someone is high. But is that training flawed?
ABC15 investigator Melissa Blasius has found situations where these officers have arrested someone who's sober.
Both these drivers say they were exhausted. One had speech problems, the other anxiety problems. And specially trained drug officers mistook their behaviors for being high.
It was the end of a holiday weekend.
Labor Day week, Monday.
Red and blue lights appeared in Jim Brongo's rearview mirror. It was a Phoenix police officer.
He was saying something, you know, you were weaving. I said, well, I'm coming home from working from another shift. I had a double shift today.
A second officer also showed up. This one was a specially trained drug recognition expert, a DRE.
They kept asking, what medication you taking? I said, I don't take no medication. But they didn't want to, I guess, hear it.
Ariel Berry told ABC15 a similar story when a different Phoenix drug recognition expert arrested her in July.
He kept repeating to me over and over again, are you on pills? Are you doing illicit drugs? I don't believe you. As though I was going to suddenly change my answer.
The officers noted evidence in their reports. Berry repeatedly said she was tired and anxious, also knocked over her purse and bungled the field sobriety tests. 63-year-old Jim also had difficulty completing field sobriety tests, especially balancing.
My leg was wobbling because, I had a long day.
The officer also said Jim had bloodshot, watery eyes and slurred speech.
What do you think about the evidence that they had against you at the time they arrested you?
I just couldn't believe it.
In both cases, the drug recognition experts made the arrests based on roadside observations, but without a confession, finding any actual drugs or toxicology test results. The DREs also never completed the full 12-step drug exam that they're trained to do.
I was falsely accused, yes.
According to the police report, Jim Brongo did not wish to complete the DRE evaluation after his arrest. A Phoenix police spokesman said that stopped the officers from gathering other information, which could prove to be exculpatory. A blood test would prove who was right and wrong. But Jim would not get those results for 7 weeks.
It's been very frustrating. I lost a lot of nights sleeping.
In the meantime, the officer issued criminal charges for DUI drugs, and Jim hired a lawyer paying a $3,000 retainer.
Right now, it's nearly 20% of our practice is DUI drugs.
Craig Rosenstein's law firm represents Jim. He says a number of those clients have been sober, and he questions the reliability of the DRE training.
DRE is pseudoscience. It's used to bolster officers when they have a hunch.
Rosenstein chalks up the mistaken arrests to both pressure to meet DUI arrest goals and confirmation bias.
Officers are being regularly told now that 30% of drivers are on some medication that could cause impairment. So the rose-colored glasses through which they're seeing the world is that they're almost surprised when people aren't impaired.
When the blood test results came back for both Ariel and Jim, they showed negative for all drugs, and the charges were dropped. But these two will still have DUI arrests on their records.
To have the results come back as negative and then to say, oh, sorry, whoops, without so much as an apology, that's traumatizing, that hurts. And I think it creates more of the divide that we're looking to heal between the community and law enforcement.
I asked Phoenix police and the city prosecutor, why don't they just wait to file charges in cases like Brongo's until those blood test results come back? The city prosecutor sent a statement saying police do not have to wait as long as there's other probable cause, and that the city prosecutor goes a long way to ensure that people are not wrongly prosecuted. In Phoenix, I'm investigator Melissa Blasius, ABC15 Arizona.
DUI dispute. One Phoenix officer racking up DUI arrests against drivers whose blood tests later showed no alcohol nor drugs.
But even after charges were dropped against them, police officials doubt the drivers were actually sober. Here's ABC15 investigator Melissa Blasius.
Tasha McConnell had to take another day off work to fight against a driver's license suspension. This after she was arrested for DUI on a July afternoon by two Phoenix cops near Joe Max and Cave Creek. One of them, David Morse, is a certified drug recognition expert, a DRE.
He asked me if I was on marijuana. He insisted that I was on harder drugs.
Tasha told him the only drugs in her system were antibiotics, but Officer Morse keyed in on eyelid and body tremors. Tasha asked the officers to record this video of her eyes as proof because she was in so much disbelief.
It was awful to be placed under arrest. I knew I'd done nothing wrong.
The police lab report confirmed this.
No drugs met the laboratory criteria.
Tasha assumed her arrest was a fluke until she saw this ABC15 report.
I was falsely accused, yes.
63-year-old Jim Brongo was arrested by the same two officers, saying he had bloodshot, watery eyes, slurred speech, and failed a field sobriety test. Brongo's blood work showed he, too, was clean.
It's been very frustrating. I lost a lot of nights sleeping.
That's a 1701.
Driving in his Camaro last year, Mike Toth was pulled over for failing to maintain his lane. The same two officers arrested him, again, for DUI drugs.
And then they wanted me to do a heel to toe, walk a straight line, which I told them I might have difficulties doing that because I'm handicapped. And they immediately arrested me and handcuffed me.
He says he told the officers his only drug use was antacid for heartburn.
And they said, well, that could impede your judgment skills. And I was like, heartburn pills?
ABC15 has been looking at Officer David Morris's DUI arrests, 56 in the last year and a half. In 9 of those cases, charges were dismissed against the drivers due to lack of evidence after lab tests showed either they were under the legal limit or they had no drugs or alcohol in their system. Do you understand what being arrested for DUI when you're sober, the impact it can have on somebody?
I don't. I wouldn't agree with sober. You're saying a person's sober. Clear talks does not necessarily exonerate a person beyond any shadow of the doubt.
Phoenix Police Detective Kemp Layden is the coordinator for all drug recognition experts statewide. He says officers can detect impairment through their training, observations, field sobriety tests, and drug recognition exams. It is the blood tests, he says, that can miss things because they don't test for all intoxicating substances. I asked about Tasha's case.
Certainly antibiotics aren't intoxicating.
Not usually, no, but without knowing specifically what antibiotic.
Layden says he's reviewed some of Officer Morris's DUI cases.
I don't have concerns about David Morris on the things that I've seen.
And if the prosecutor decides to drop a case for lack of evidence?
That's the system. I can't control anything beyond that.
I was honestly hoping for an apology.
Tasha McConnell says both officers in her case failed to show up at her latest hearing. She did want to face them again.
They know they're above the law.
The imbalance of power with police, real or perceived, concerns both Mike and Tasha.
They're just allowed to take whoever they want off the street and they can arrest you. You have to go through all of this and they just get away with it.
Do you feel for these people at all?
I can sympathize with anybody that's arrested. It's a traumatic experience for anybody that is arrested, but that wouldn't change our mission of public safety and the standards that have been set forth.
In Phoenix, I'm investigator Melissa Blasius, ABC15 Arizona.
The ABC15 investigators exposing one Phoenix officer's questionable DUI arrest. Some of the drivers he's accused have already come forward saying they have the blood test to prove their innocence. But as ABC15 investigator Melissa Blasius finds out, their options for justice could be limited.
I'm just happy that it's finally over.
Tasha McConnell was pulled over by 2 Phoenix cops 5 months ago. They accused her of running a stop sign and driving under the influence of drugs. But now the courts have dismissed her DUI charges and even the traffic violation.
They weren't able to prove that I didn't stop at the stop sign without a shadow of a doubt.
ABC15 has been looking into the history of the main officer in McConnell's arrest, Officer David Morse, a certified drug recognition expert, a DRE. Since April 2018, he has made 56 DUI arrests, but 9 of those cases have been dropped for lack of evidence.
Blood tests showed the 9 drivers were either below the legal limit or had no detectable drugs or alcohol in their system. Even so, the man in charge of Phoenix's DRE program is vouching for Officer Morris.
I don't have concerns of things that I reviewed of David Morris. He's reached the threshold and is showing proficiency when he is allowed to conduct a DRE evaluation.
ABC15 obtained DRE evaluation logs for Morris and 14 other Phoenix police officers through a public records request. Looking at a 1-year period, Officer Morris by far did the most exams, 18. He also had the most errors, 2 based on blood tests. Phoenix police quick to point out those tests don't catch every possible drug.
Clear talks does not necessarily exonerate a person beyond any shadow of the doubt.
What do you think about the head drug recognition expert in the city of Phoenix saying that you weren't necessarily sober that day?
That's crazy to me.
ACLU staff attorney Jared Keenan is a former public defender. He also has concerns.
The problem is telling officers that purely subjective observations should trump scientific tests.
Like bloodshot, watery eyes and slurred speech.
There's no way to later objectively, know whether those things were there or whether the officer was just putting them in to justify the arrest after the fact.
Tasha believes her traffic stop never should have happened.
I believe I did stop at that stop sign. I think he was looking for somebody to pull over at that time so he could have an arrest on his numbers.
Drivers upset about a questionable DUI arrest can file a complaint with police. Beyond that, their options could be limited.
It's very difficult to sue the police if they're acting in good faith. And if these officers are being trained and told that this sort of subjective DRE recognition tests are valid, right, arguably they're all acting in good faith.
Officer Morris remains on the streets of North Phoenix, patrolling for DUI. I'm investigator Melissa Blasius, ABC 15 Arizona.